It is Sunday, August 28th here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the live stream of the draft. It's a big night. I'm your host, Matt Schauf. With me tonight is Tod Burros at Best Ball NFL on Twitter. Thanks for joining me, Todd.
Everybody's crazy about the Schauf dressed man.
That's right. And I even trim my beard up nice for this one, so people will recognize me. We're here because Jared Smola is doing his FFPC Main Event draft. It just kicked off at 7 o'clock, so if you're watching, you can see some of the picks already off the board. We were all set to start, and then I saw the report from Mike Garafolo of NFL Network that Brian Robinson, the Washington running back, got shot in an attempted robbery. So a little bit of scramble and something that should alter, at least a few picks in this draft. It's a developing story. That was the first report I saw.
People notice. That's the interesting thing, right? It literally happened as these guys were starting. You and me, we're addicts, right? We're checking Twitter while we're drafting. We're engaged. Not everyone is.
Yeah. I mean, I got it as a push notification on my phone from the Mike Garafolo tweet, and that was the first mention, like I said. So he says he's in stable condition, which is obviously good to hear, and we'll kind of see ultimately what exactly this means for Brian Robinson. But it's tough to imagine that he will be able to start the regular season on time, and then we'll see beyond that. Obviously, it impacts him. It impacts Antonio Gibson, potentially J.D. McKissick. So shot multiple times. We're getting more from Adam Schefter now. It says he was shot multiple times in an apparent carjacking attempt. The injuries are considered non-life threatening. So like I said, is in stable condition. So he's doing okay, considering the circumstances.
I mean, shot multiple times. I'm thinking 5-6 weeks minimum, right? But we can't worry about that right now. But one thing we do know is that it has thrown draft season a little bit of a unexpected turn. And we send out our best wishes to Mr. Robinson, and we hope for his quick and speedy return to the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I obviously hope that he's great. Fantasy aside, hope he recovers well, whatever that means for his football playing this year. So turning to the draft, we'll see. I know that Jared knows about the Brian Robinson news because I was communicating with him as soon as I saw it right before this draft. We'll see how many other drafters are aware of the situation, where Gibson goes. And, we're all adjusting on the fly to know what this means. So let's turn to the other players that we do know more about that have more stable situations and talk about who's been drafted. So the FFPC format, just in case anybody's watching and is not familiar, you start 2 running backs, you start 2 wide receivers. There are 2 flex spots. Otherwise, pretty normal quarterback, kicker, tight end, but it's tight end premium scoring. So it's 1.5 points per tight end reception, 1 point per reception for everybody else. So obviously that boosts tight ends up the board. Anybody who's watching right now can already see it's doing that in this draft. And anybody, of course, who has experience with FFPC knows that there's the tight end premium. They get pushed up the board. So this draft started with Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey is the top 2, Justin Jefferson, and then Cooper Kupp in the 4 spot. And Todd, we've seen that for most of draft season, and that's might be the wrong way to look at it with how it is now, but through most of the time that people have been drafting, it's been Cooper Kupp and then everybody else at receiver. Justin Jefferson's been creeping up. Now Jefferson's ahead of Kupp in ADP on multiple sites. What do you think of the way those 2 guys are going off the board now?
I've had Kupp as my number 3 and the number 1 receiver off the board since day one. And I do want to mention, one other really important thing about the FFPC and season long versus where people might normally see me, which is the best ball, is that the playoffs in these leagues are week 13 and week 14. So it's an extra level of strategy. Do you want to take a guy week 13 and 14? Because what happens is if you come in first or second place, you automatically get through to the bonus playoffs with a chance at $1 million up top. But to win money in your league, you need to win in week 13. And then in week 14 is the championship where, most of your money, well, I'm getting FBGs confused, but still, I believe first and second place are the only people who are guaranteed money. Am I correct with that?
For the main event, there is a regular season prize
That's
for the
right.
league champ. I think there's one for the league champ and one for the
If
highest.
he doubles up, right? If he has the most points, is it most points? And
There's,
let me look it up
I
again.
believe it's 2,000 for the league champ and 1,000 for the highest total points in the regular season.
Correct. There you go. And but it does bring in an extra level of strategy. And I did 2 FBGs recently, and I did 1 FBG in a best ball where I had the 4, and let me tell you, the 4 is not fun. It's probably my least favorite spot on the board right now.
Is that because you have Jefferson significantly behind the usual top 3?
Well, I have Jefferson as my 3rd. I think Kupp, with had an outlier year. I don't think we can expect that again. And you've added Allen Robinson, who is a significant threat, a guy I'm very high on. I've got Jefferson as my 3. I've got Kupp, Chase, and everyone else kind of tied 4 through like 15. I mean, I don't, there's to me that once you get past Jefferson, you're looking at a tier that goes a pretty long way. I mean, if I like CeeDee Lamb almost as much as Cooper Kupp.
Really?
Yeah.
So are you taking, I think I missed that the first time around. Are you taking Jefferson as the first wide receiver off the board if you're picking 3?
Absolutely. All off season.
Okay. Gotcha.
I felt like Thielen's getting older, and I think that people underestimate A, his talent, and B, the fact that they have an upgrade there with going from a coaching staff that wore leather helmets to a coaching staff that is a modern offense.
That's wearing the Q-tip helmets on top of the regular helmets. Yeah. Thank you to our buddy Biplab Mandal, who posted the exact payouts for the league champs. I just put those up on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that. I'm not going to run through it all for anybody.
It literally was a bip on our radar.
No, he's always more than a bip on our radar, especially if you're drafted in these drafts. You got to watch out for him. Behind Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, Austin Eckler went 5th in this draft.
We're partnering on a few drafts, by the way. So it was a partner joke.
Don't worry. I'm sure that he didn't take offense to it. Well, I think the goal is for him to take offense to it, but I'm sure nobody else was worried about it. But Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce goes at the 7th spot in this draft, and then Devontae Adams, and then we got a block of running backs. Todd, is there anybody in that range that you don't think belongs there, either whether they should be going much later or even just somebody that you're taking consistently over somebody else?
Yeah, I've got Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift both behind Saquon Barkley. And I'm not drafting much Najee in general. I think that he really got like the perfect storm as a rookie, and he wasn't that efficient. And I like efficient guys in my early picks. I want guys who I feel really can crush. He doesn't have a great offensive line. He really needs that pass game volume. Now you've got Freiermuth in year 2. You've added Pickens. You've got Deontay Johnson. There's a lot of weapons. DeAndre Swift is a part-time player. Jamal Williams is not going anywhere. I've got both those guys behind Henry, Kamara, and Barkley. And really, I've got him behind Aaron Jones and maybe Joe Mixon as well.
I'm with you on that. Aaron Jones, I haven't been as much on, but every other player, I agree in that range. And Joe Mixon is at the front of that group of running backs for me. I agree on Harris. He's going to have to get the otherworldly volume like he did last year to keep it up. And he's, set up to lead that backfield, but the Steelers have to not want to work him as hard on the ground last year. And obviously the most valuable part of that is the receiving. And I got to think that pretty much any quarterback besides the deteriorating arm of Roethlisberger last year is sending more of those targets downfield and fewer to Harris. And, whenever you talk about him, it's going to sound like you hate Najee Harris, but we're in the range where if somebody is your RB9 instead of your RB5 or 6, that basically means you're not drafting him.
Well, every year we look back at ADP and we see the errors that we made, right? And I think that especially in contests like this, I think we get inured. I'm up to, like $15,000 worth of leagues because of best balls, and maybe even pushing 20 when you consider Underdog and everything. But this is a 1,700 or a 1,500, a 2,000, depending on how you got into this dollar investment. And you do see in the main events people getting their guy more. ADP is a guide, and I use it a lot more in best ball where I'm doing volume. But if you're going to do 2 or 3 season-long drafts at a high stakes, I would rather lose with my guys and my evaluations. And you're right, it's not putting down Najee Harris to drop him 5 or 6 places.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with the ADP meaning less here because you're not, spreading out exposures and making sure that you differentiate. I think the ADP is most important in showing you where you need to grab a guy and how long you can wait. You don't want to take somebody in round 4 because you love him if he's going in round 8, because then you're giving up, all of the value on him. But don't adhere too much to it and miss out on somebody just because you thought you could squeeze another round out of him. Stephon Diggs is one specific player I'm surprised to see not go earlier here.
That is a shock.
In my main event, he went 4th overall, second wide receiver off the board. I think Jefferson was the first wide out there, but then Diggs went there, I believe, to Dave Hubbard, who's somebody that high stakes drafters will know pretty well.
Yep. I would say what's interesting about that is the guy reached a little bit for Devontae. Then he got like the deal of all deals with Diggs. And then he passed on Chubb and ETN in the third. And what's really interesting to me, in general, that is a surprise, right? Diggs dropping to the second round is a surprise. But what I'm starting to look for is how these guys are building. And already you've got 1-0 running back team and one team 11.
Infinity running back.
Dameon Pierce in the 4th round just, loves his vegetables, loves the color green. It's going to be real interesting to see what he makes of that team.
Yeah, what do we call this? The celery stalk build?
I call it stupid. But, we each have our own. I don't feel like, Pierce is a 4th round pick. I don't think he's a 4th round pick. And to reach for him and take him in the 4th round when you've already got 3 running backs, that honestly borders on stupid. And, maybe this guy ends up winning $1 million with this build. That's the beautiful thing about ADP is you can make mistakes and still get lucky. But I think he significantly put himself behind the 8 ball. And I'm a big believer in winning the flex with wide receivers.
Mm-hmm. And it's important here to look at the differences between where you're playing. It's a whole lot easier to do something that might not be optimal and get lucky on it in a 12-team league. It's another thing to beat out, 3,000 other top-level drafters, which is kind of what you're doing here.
It also puts pressure on other people in the draft. Okay, so you look at the team that's up now, 3 wide receivers and now he's gone 4. And I don't blame him because he's got 4 really good players. But when you've got the team next to you with 3 running backs, the team close to you with 4, this is going to be a real interesting draft to see how these teams balance out these one-sided starts.
Yeah, and it's important to see what the draft board does and then adjust your strategy within that. Because I'm sure that anybody starting this draft was not expecting a 4 running back team. I'm sure the Devontae Adams drafter, as you mentioned earlier, was probably not expecting Stephon Diggs to get back to that spot. So, we won't know whether the plan was to start with 4 receivers or if there's a reaction to who.
Or if he's, there are guys. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
There are guys who do 150 of these teams, mm-hmm. right? 50 of these teams, 70 of these teams. We don't know what that guy's portfolio looks like. And I don't mind a 4 running back start. I did it twice this weekend myself between best ball and an FBG. But I think a 4 running back start is a wrong way because wide receivers outscore running backs for most of the draft, round by round, and they're spikier. It's and they're more likely to get injured. I feel much better having a 4 running back start, 4 wide receivers start than a 4 running back start.
And I think there's a little bit compounding of the risk here by taking Dameon Pierce well ahead of ADP. And that's what we were talking about is you want to get your guy, but Dameon Pierce is already moving up the board. Part. If you're taking him as the RB17, you're reaching too far to get your guy thinking, even if he smashes, I mean, is he going far beyond RB17? He's got to be a top 12 running back at least to pay off big time from where we're going here. And we're still talking about a 4th running back. So now you're also minimizing the impact if Dameon Pierce does do what you're hoping to do. So just overall, I would say not the optimal way to attack that.
And the other interesting thing is our friend Jared, I would have to guess, would have taken Kittle if he fell. And that would have been a nice pick for him. I'll be interested to see because I don't see who's available. We don't have a list of who's available right now. But looking at the board real quick, Terry McLaurin is there. Breece Hall is there. Cam Akers. I'm going to say that he's going to take Terry McLaurin, maybe. Jerry Jeudy. Okay. I thought he might go Terry McLaurin, but I have no problem with Jerry Jeudy being the guy there. And the other thing that I start looking at with teams is the blend, right? So Cooper Kupp's a high reception guy. Higgins is more of a spiky guy. Judy's more of a floor guy. I like what Jared has done in the mix of the wide receivers that he's taken.
Yeah, and since I spend more time talking to Jared about this stuff, I know that he was probably not looking at Kittle, although I would be curious to know if he was taking Kittle there. I would imagine that he's considering one at the next turn, but we won't give things away too much ahead of his picks.
My favorite tight end is still to come. Well, my favorite tight end is Kyle Pitts. But my highest owned tight end is still on the board.
I mean, Kyle Pitts is America's favorite tight end at this point, isn't he?
Well, I mean, he's only going, you can still get him at times toward the end of the second round. I got him in an FBG at 2.9 the other day from the 4 spot with Cooper Kupp. That's only a couple picks higher than he went last year. And we know the learning curve at tight end. I think he is in for a really big year.
And I mean, he was probably just 4 touchdowns away from being ahead of Mark Andrews in these drafts on a regular basis. I think he had a much better season last year than his final numbers even showed just because of the bad luck on touchdowns.
Yeah. And his quarterback play has taken a slight downturn, but I don't think, Matt Ryan, we've seen it before. We've seen how these guys at that age, their arms starts going. And, the reports out of Indianapolis are that he looks fine. But when I watched him last year, I didn't see a lot that I liked about Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I would say certainly not enough of a downgrade, at least to seriously impact Kyle Pitts' fantasy outlook, especially when you look at the target options around him on an Atlanta team that I don't think any of us expects to be very good this year.
This is a real tough. Again, I did this. Michael Thomas in the 5th round. To me, that's stealing. I've got about 20% Michael Thomas right now because of the injury concerns. I was getting him in the 7th, 8th round, and I'm still happy to take him in the 5th round. How about you?
Yeah, I'm willing to take him in the 5th round. I think this is right about where any higher than wide receiver 25 as he is right here. It might get a little bit early, and I don't have exactly who's available in front of me, like you said. Like Adam Thielen, I think Michael Thomas, Adam Thielen would be close for me in drafts where I wouldn't.
Juju, Bateman, Godwin, DK Metcalf, and Mooney are other guys on the board right now.
Those are the guys that I would mix together, but I think this is where Michael Thomas belongs because he still has upside from this.
It's a little earlier than I've seen him. And A.J. Dillon is my favorite running back in this range, and he just went off the board to team number 3.
Mm-hmm. So looking back to the team that started out with Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs, then DJ Moore in the third, Todd, would you have given any thought to Josh Allen at that 4th round spot where that team took Allen Robinson? Does stacking come into play for you in these tournaments? And you talked about how you've drafted the Football Guys Players Championship, which is, basically the same format as the FFPC main event. Would you consider Josh Allen in that spot over Allen Robinson?
I love Allen Robinson. He's one of my most owned guys. But one thing that I've learned, sometimes the hard way, is that you want to stay balanced as a tiebreaker, right? So if you put me on the board in the 4th round, I'm taking Josh Allen over Allen Robinson. I don't have to worry about taking another quarterback the rest of the draft. I've got a high-end stack. I still got 3 wide receivers. I just like answering questions as I draft. I don't like being too far out of balance, because what you find in certain drafts, especially in main events where people are getting their guy, is you might end up like, let's say running backs just go nuts over the next few rounds. And now you're reaching in the 13th, 14th, 15th round for guys you don't want. And that's best ball. So move it up a few rounds for season long. So I would have taken Allen most likely, just not to be out of balance. Or maybe if you didn't want the stack and you don't want to take quarterback earlier, I might have gone Kittle there.
Yeah, I think that would be worth a look as well. I agree with not getting out of balance. I mean, I get.
And then he just took my favorite tight end.
There you go. That's what I was wondering if you were talking about. And I'm kind of surprised that Jared didn't take Dallas Goedert at that 4th spot in this round. Took Breece Hall.
I'm not a Breece Hall fan.
I'm a Breece Hall fan. I'm not a situation fan. I don't love that
at ADP.
Yeah, it looks like we're heading into the season with Michael Carter probably being the first one on the field, at least splitting that backfield evenly.
Looks like a 50-50 split to me.
By
the time it's all said and done.
I thought we were going to see more of Breece Hall pushing Carter aside by this point than we have. But if they're stubborn, and if Michael Carter was pretty good last year. I was down on him after Breece Hall and saying that he's going to be the guy, but we're at least going to be into the season before there's a shot at that.
I want to go back to that four wide receiver team.
Mm-hmm.
There is a chance I would have taken Robinson. But in general, I probably would have taken Allen. But I really like what they did. Now they've got the tight end. And now he's coming into the range where you can get what used to be dead zone running backs, but I really like this year. Guys who go 7th, 8th, 9th round in best balls. And Team 11 got Mooney, one of my favorite wide receivers. So I don't like the Pitts team taking Mahomes without a stack in the 5th round. I don't like that pick.
Especially with no receivers already rostered.
No receivers.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's interesting too that the Travis Kelce team 2 picks before that did not take Mahomes and took Deontay Johnson as the 4th wide receiver. So it looks like there are at least several drafters that are trying to, win the flex spot with both flex spots with those wideouts. Cause we're just finished round 5. We've got 1, 2, 3, just 3 teams, I guess, that have 4 wideouts so far. A couple others that have 3.
That team, Dak, has been falling really far. I saw him in the 12th round in an FBG. He's also got CeeDee Lamb. So maybe it'll be interesting, or Jalen Hurts, yep. Right? So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I'm very interested to see if he comes back with Hurts.
Yeah, no other quarterbacks off the board between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So it certainly could be a case of saying, I don't really want Mahomes here, and I have these 3 options, Mahomes, Dak, and Jalen Hurts to stack with those top pass catchers.
because you've got two or three pretty heavy running back teams and two or three really heavy wide receiver teams. What that done is it's balanced the room. Okay. And because the room is balanced, now it becomes kind of a who can get to their missing spots quickest and fill them the best. What's that game with the musical chairs? It'll be interesting to see who ends up without a good, for being unbalanced if anybody doesn't get a chair.
Who do you think is scrambling for a chair right now? It's got to be the Kyle Pitts Mahomes team, right? With no wide receivers, and we've got 30 of them off the board.
Yeah. Let's see who's available. Amari, Renfro, Elijah Moore. I'm going to say Elijah Moore would be a good pick here.
Yeah, because at this point, what you're looking for is wide receivers who can go well above where you're drafting them, right?
Well, he took Chris Godwin. And that's not the pick I would make. Mm-hmm. Coming off an injury, your first wide receiver, but and you see Antonio Gibson, someone got the memo on Brian Robinson.
Yep.
And that's the first running back, taking him above J.K. Dobbins, taking him above Tony Pollard, Elijah Mitchell. So that is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And he ends up being the first running back for that Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs team that we were talking about. I certainly think that's a fine range for Antonio Gibson. Where have you been at on J.K. Dobbins? Because most people who are watching this, at least from Draft Sharks points, are familiar with me and Jared talking about Dobbins. Where have you been at on the Ravens running back?
I took him at the end of round 6 in Pros versus Joe's Best Ball as the third running back, and I got a lot of heat for it. I think where he's going, he's a good value right now. That being said, I also think this is where, the good range of quarterbacks are going. This is where, you're about to drop a significant tier at wide receiver as well. So I don't have a lot of Dobbins, but I do think it is the appropriate range for Dobbins.
Yeah, I would be more interested for a best ball roster where I don't have to watch and see when his workload picks up. It worries me that there's the report that it wasn't really a report, actually. It was more like rumination from a beat writer of it's tough to say when he's going to start getting double-digit touches a week. And, maybe that's just a beat writer messing with numbers, and maybe he's in the 15 touch range right away, but the fact that there's a question has me a little bit iffy.
Where are you at with Allen Lazard?
He's somebody that I just honestly don't pay a whole lot of attention to, because I think he's going in a fair range, but I'm not scared of missing on something big with him. So I haven't brought myself to getting him.
Yeah, I don't get it. I think that I'm a huge believer in opportunity, but more at running back. Mm-hmm. At wide receiver, I really feel like the cream tends to rise to the top, and I think the cream on that team is going to be Romeo Doubs. I think he's the most talented receiver they have. He's the one who's going to be open, and Rodgers can have his favorites, but he's also going to throw to the open guy. And there'll be a couple weeks where, he can try and make Allen Lazard the number one, but that goes back to why I like Aaron Jones so much. Aaron Jones could have more catches than anyone on that team.
He could. That would be a lot of targets for a running back. That's been my hesitation, is I'm just not sure that how high that particular ceiling goes. If this team just runs the ball more in general, brings down the volume, and it's still Aaron Jones up top there. But if
have you seen the splits without Devontae Adams?
Well, yeah, but we're talking about what is it, like 6 or 7 games in that one though?
Yeah,
plus, but also my other issue with that is when Devontae Adams has been out, we're talking about in season, like, we don't have Devontae Adams. What do we do? Whereas now we traded Devontae Adams. This is the new offense. This is what we do without him around.
Yeah. And he took Adam Thielen after Breece Hall. And I got, I like our buddy Jared, but I don't like those picks.
So what do you not like about Adam Thielen?
he's old and he's broken down every year. The last couple years with, major injuries don't bother me because those are random luck. But as guys get older, when we've seen it with a bunch of wide receivers where they just can't stay healthy. Old as gold, Bip said.
From young Bip Lab.
Well, I mean, is Elijah Moore gone? I mean, I don't see it. I mean, I don't know how you take Adam Thielen over Elijah Moore. I don't know how you take Alan Lazard over Elijah Moore. I don't know how you take Chris Godwin over Elijah Moore.
You don't worry about Elijah Moore's target count in New York? I mean, he's going to
do, but I think him and Flacco have a thing. I think there's a chance. Look, I don't think you're winning a championship with Thielen or Lazard in the 6th round. That's just my feeling. I could be wrong. I'm wrong every year, quite often. But I'm doing commentary and I don't like those picks myself. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on Thielen and Hall after a pretty good start.
I mean, Thielen, I have no problem with. I think he's a strong value down there. Maybe he continues to break down. I think as a 4th receiver at this point, that's the downside risk that you're taking by letting him be in round 6. If he stays healthy, I mean, he's been a top 16 receiver the last 2 times that he's been healthy. So that's what you're hoping for, is that if he's healthy.
Was that in the leather helmet days?
It was not even, was it 2 years ago? I know this past season he missed some games.
I'm joking.
I
picked up Adam Thielen in a really, really deep expert dynasty back when I did dynasty. And I saw he made the roster and I was just like, all right, he's the 3rd, so I've always had a thing for Thielen. I just, guys pushing 30 who seem to get banged up a lot. And I also like Osborne behind him. If there wasn't a guy behind him I liked. But, look, if he stays healthy, it's not a bad pick. No. It's just not the pick I would make. And now, again, now you're seeing running back. This is where you're going to see most of the good running backs go between now and the end of the 8th round, and it's going to get really thin. Montgomery, Mitchell, Pollard, Penny, and Singletary. I would have taken. I know who I'd take here. I would take Chase Edmonds. He didn't go yet, did he?
Nope, he's still on the board.
I shouldn't say that, should I? Is anyone listening?
Know. Is there a should? Is there an etiquette? I don't know. It's not me, at least, because I might have a little bit more insight into what Jared's thinking.
I would have taken Edmonds ahead of a lot of the guys who just went.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. He wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have been taking Devin Singletary ahead of him or Rashad Penny.
Bip says he'd take Elijah. I have no problem with Elijah here. Well, see, that's the thing, Bip. I would have already had Elijah, and now I'd have Edmonds.
You mentally took him off the board already.
Oh, yeah.
My issue with Elijah Moore is that there's the only thing in his favor is his talent. Otherwise, they drafted a top 10 receiver. Corey Davis had some rapport with Zach Wilson last year, and I don't trust the coaching staff. And it doesn't sound like Zach Wilson has been very good this year. And Zach Wilson is starting the year hurt. So it's not an offense that I really like. It's not a coaching staff I really like. It's a crowded target tree with a pretty good backfield. So I can see this coaching staff not leaning past as much as maybe they should, even if they fall behind. So, if everything breaks right for Elijah Moore, I think he's a good enough player to maximize it. But it's tough for me to see the everything breaking right for him. It looks like we had a rollback in this draft, by the way.
So basically, I started not on Elijah, and lately I've been adding him late because I think there's a chance that Flacco keeps the job.
Really?
And I think Flacco is going to be a lot better for Elijah Moore.
I can't see that. I think they have too much invested in Zach Wilson. It's just year 2 for him.
All right. So, they rolled back to take Josh Jacobs instead of Singletary.
Which I would rather have Josh Jacobs than Devin Singletary, but it is kind of a funny thing to roll back the draft for.
And he took Hurts. He didn't take either guy. Now, I have no problem with Hurts. I like him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad pick. But Edmonds has been going earlier and earlier, and it's a little surprising to me that both Elijah and if the Devontae Adams team gets Edmonds, that is such Yahtzee. And Johnny Kalinowski, we see you over there. Brian Robinson in stable condition. We did mention that Gibson's stock's up. Gibson is, obviously he's up. It's going to be interesting. But there goes Elijah. And remember this, Elijah for profit.
So that team that just took Elijah Moore got him as a fourth receiver. Jamar Chase, Juju Smith-Schuster, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore.
If Edmonds doesn't come off the board here, I am going to be shocked to this guy.
There we
go. All right. So now this dude who passed on Josh Allen, he's got 4 excellent wide receivers. He's got a tight end who can be as good as the top guys in the 5th round. And now he's got 2 very, very reasonable starters to start the season. I'm going to be very interested to see how that team plays out.
And so Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are gone as potential stacks if that drafter cares about stacking. But we still can get Derek Carr much later. You can get Matthew Stafford probably in another couple of rounds or so. So certainly options there. And Todd, do you look at the QB stacking option once you get those wide receivers or top tight ends early? Obviously, it's not so much for Kyle Pitts, but if you draft Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews or whoever else at wide receiver, do you start looking at stacking quarterback, or is it just something that happens if you get into that range where the quarterback is, comfy going?
It's a very interesting thing. And I think there's a significant difference between best ball and season long. So best ball stacking is hugely important because each week is a do or die week, right? And not as much on the FFPC, but on Underdog, where week 16 you're up against 18 other teams just to get to the final, and if you don't get to the final, you're not making money. You do 150 teams, have a 30% advance rate, 20% advance rate week 15, and you get all your teams knocked out and 8 or 9 of them in week 16, you're losing money, right? You're losing about 25 to 30% of your money. So in best ball, I want to access stacking as a way to get that 1% week 17, less than 1% week 17, and 5.5% week 16. In a season long where you have a 3-week race, it's a nice to have, not a need to have. Right. It's something that is more of a tiebreaker for me. I'll go a few picks to take my quarterback, but especially in season long where you can, just take one in a draft, take them late. I'm much less likely to force the issue with a stack, just on its own.
And there, of course, we're talking about a large field tournament for the regular season too. If you get down to a single league, it's almost a non-factor, right?
I also just want to jump in. I still don't love Team 11, but we have to go back and be fair and say adding Darnell Mooney, Hunter Renfrow, and Christian Kirk, those are 3 good wide receivers. I still think he made an error, but he's making something of it. Team 9, I think, is making guys. Godwin's going to start slow. Amari Cooper is spiky, and Devonta Smith might be the 3rd option on the team. I don't like what Team 9's doing. And what was your question?
I just said well, now I'm looking at that team, but I just said once we get down to single leagues, stacking quarterbacks and pass catchers is almost a non-factor.
Correct. And then you see that I'm back to being a little disappointed with Team 8. Drake London, a guy I'm very high on, but you're going to see running back really thin out, I think, by the time it gets back to him. I mean, he does have two guys he can start, but Drake London is going to sit on his bench.
Yeah, that drafter could have taken Miles Sanders, I believe, as the 35th running back off the board. Or, yeah, 35th. And you don't have to be a fan of Miles Sanders to take a shot on him there, and just you're mixing and matching.
Yeah, I like what he had done with Gibson and Edmonds. Personally, I would have taken another running back there. I don't know which one was on the board though. Let me look. Maybe there wasn't because Harris is gone. Yeah, I can't blame him. There really wasn't anyone. It thinned out. It thinned out pretty bad. I don't see anyone that Miles Sanders is Miles Sanders. Yep. Yeah, I think Miles Sanders could have been a decent choice there.
Yeah. But I think after Miles Sanders, I can understand Drake London, but he's the last one to me that, the upside includes being well inside the top 20.
Well, I disagree, Bip. But he's got a lot more experience. Bip likes wide receivers a little bit more than I do. I like the comfort. There's nothing worse than being in a league where you spent a lot of money and just not having any running backs to start because you can't get them on waivers.
Mm-hmm.
Where I do like London. So I don't think Bip's wrong. It's just, I think it's more of a salt and pepper thing. I think he had 4 really good running wide receivers. I probably would have taken Sanders there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a bit more splitting hairs than you screwed up that pick. But just
absolutely. Drake London is a good pick.
For anybody listening instead of watching,
I agree with Bip.
Bip says nothing wrong with London there. Could be a league winner. Lots of RBs left. They're all hurt by week 3. So I certainly can get with what he's saying. And it'll be interesting to watch the way the rest of this team is built because, maybe this drafter just doesn't like Miles Sanders at all and figures that Miles Sanders there is a worse pick than round 11 Kenneth Gainwell, plus Boston Scott and just owning the Philly backfield later and, stacking up other guys. We talked about the Jets backfield. So, we'll see.
Absolutely. It's just a comfort thing for me.
Oh yeah.
I don't like Sanders that much myself this year. So I'm giving him a hard time, but
it especially hurts me because I started out really liking Miles Sanders, but there's been nothing to make me feel comfy about it since then. And I've come off of him because, initially you could see the upside and workload, but he's already gotten injured. He's already a high injury risk. We knew that heading in. So he's gotten hurt. There have been signals about other guys getting high value touches. So I can understand if you're just averse to Miles Sanders. The teams next to him, both of the next 2 teams next to that drafter, each only have 1 running back through 8 rounds. And we still have Miles Sanders on the board through the end of round 8, along with all the other running backs who are left. So the team that started with Travis Kelce followed with CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson, J.K. Dobbins, the only running back there through 8 rounds. And then Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance in back-to-back rounds. I like the Ayuk and Lance stack in consecutive rounds. I would like to know what this team's running back plan is now because I would be feeling uneasy about sitting on Dobbins as my only running back at this point.
Well, and again, you're also in a position where you have to choose every week which wide receivers you're going to start, and you might end up having your best wide receiver on your bench that week when the week's over, right? And the other thing to consider with season long is it's a 12-week season, right? It's a 12-week season, and if you don't finish top 4, you're out, right? It's top 4, Bip? Top 4 in the main event too. And if if you're Dobbins might be on PUP. They're still talking about a 3-week stint for him. If you're giving up 15, 17 points at 2 running back spots, I don't care how spiky it's not best ball where the computer's going to pick your best wide receivers. Mm-hmm. I think, a deep 0 team is much better in best ball where you've got, 15, 16, 14 weeks of regular season, and the computer's picking your highest, spikiest wide receivers every week. If you get 2 running backs every week who give you 10 points, that's not bad. He might get Miles on the way back, though. Mm-hmm. And I like Russ to the Sutton team. I don't love that team overall. But that, Russ was the last, I guess you could say Dak too, last of the quarterbacks.
I'm much higher on Russ as a round 9 quarterback than I am on Cortland Sutton as a round 3 wide receiver 12 off the board. But if you take Cortland Sutton, then you get Russell Wilson, then that's the way to have Sutton.
You gotta think Sanders comes off. He took another wide receiver, this guy.
We got Melvin Gordon leaving the board before Miles Sanders as well. Jared took Cordell Patterson with Miles Sanders still out there. Before we get away from these 2 teams in the middle, so we did have Miles Sanders go to that 2 running back team: Antonio Gibson, Chase Edmonds, Miles Sanders. So, I mean, this team seems to be kind of falling into some of these guys. I mean, Miles Sanders at RB 37, late round 9. You got to like him there, regardless how you feel about him.
Well, and you've got David Carr coming up. David Carr or Derek Carr? Derek Carr coming, might come back to him to go with his Devontae. Let's see where Carr normally goes in these. He goes in the 13th round. He's got plenty of time.
Yep.
Brady's still on the board. Prescott's still on the board. Yeah, no,
Stafford's still on the board.
Team 8 is a very dangerous team now.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the bye weeks in those teams in there, because I noticed that on the team that did get Trey Lance, Brandon Ayuk, and just has J.K. Dobbins as its running back so far, we've got 3-4 week 9 buys among the first 8 players picked, and the team right next to that has, I believe, 4 round 10 buy or week 10 buys through the first 7 rounds. Is that something you look at all as you're building one of these teams? Is it an advantage to have them all, to have that many important players in that range, or is that a level that worries you heading into the season?
I think we need to go through and look at the team 13, 14s on these teams. As far as standard bye weeks, it means nothing to me in season long. I think you could make the case that if you could have a team with every single player on bye out of your top 8 in the same week, you lose 1 week and then you've got a full lineup for the rest of the weeks. So I don't hear that kind of theory thrown around too much, but it's kind of a principle that I've always gone on. It's not about finishing undefeated. It's about, winning the league. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to sacrifice 1 week to be strong overall. So tiebreakers are like way down in my consideration. Because even worst case scenario, if you end up losing 1 week, that means you're stronger for the rest of the weeks.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at how Jared has built so far. So the last pick of his that we talked about really was Jalen Hurts. So just to run through his whole lineup so far: Cooper Kupp in the first round, Leonard Fournette, T. Higgins, Jerry Jeudy, Breece Hall in the 5th, which I think is decent value on Breece Hall. RB20 though, so running backs fell a little bit in this draft. Adam Thielen in round 6, Todd and I talked about. Jalen Hurts in round 7, QB6. I like him there. George Pickens at wide receiver 44 in round 8, and then Cordero Patterson, the most recent pick. Where are you at on George Pickens at this point, Todd?
He was my favorite tape, and I still wasn't taking out of all. I just bought. It was the dumbest thing. I thought there was still a third. I thought it was going to be the 4th wide receiver this year, not the 3rd. And so I let this large swath of the season go stupidly. And by the time I woke up, it was like 3-4 weeks until he had his big breakout. Long story short, I believe in him. I've taken him in a couple drafts right around where Jared took him.
So you think wide receiver 44 is a fine range for him? And he went notably ahead of Chase Claypool in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been pretty regular lately. Mm-hmm. In best ball, I don't mind putting the two together. Mm-hmm. Because I think that, one of them is going to have a pretty big week most weeks, and the price is right. I mean, what you're hoping for with Pickens is the Justin Jefferson, right? You're hoping that he's got that kind of range when you're taking him this high. Mm-hmm. I think he's a little bit over his skis value-wise at this point. But I also don't think, I think he's going to have a pretty good year.
Right. It's certainly not crazy. If we just look at the wideouts that went behind him, we got Sky Moore, Traylon Burks, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in that range where you're like, oh, that was a mistake to take.
Yeah, and that's why I've started taking him there. Mm-hmm. Because I do think that we got one guy thinking team 1 is fire.
Yeah, I was thinking we'd go take a look at that one.
All right.
So team 1 is fire, according to Joe Saviano on the YouTube feed. Jonathan Taylor, number 1 overall, Debo to end round 2, Michael Pittman around the turn, Terry McLaurin and Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 4-5 turn, Tony Pollard, Rashad Penny at the 6-7, and then Joe Burrow, Dawson Knox at the 8-9 turn. Todd, what's your take on this team?
It's okay. I don't mean to throw damp water on his fire, but I don't think it's fire. Now, let's go back to a team that I do think is fire again, team 8. Now he's added Darrell Henderson, and he took him over Kenny Gainwell and Michael Carter. I'm not sure I would have done that. I think I prefer guys with floor. Well, you know what? I like Henderson too. There's 2 ways of looking at it. And Joe, look, that's this. I do this for fun, right? I mean, I don't think the team's fire, but one thing I've learned is I can be wrong, and I've been wrong plenty. But I think it's an okay team. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sitting there, with I'm not smelling smoke.
Mm-hmm. The team, I do like it better than the team next to it that took Josh Allen. We talked about the Stephon Diggs team letting him by earlier. Team 2 has got Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams is the first 2, Mike Evans, Josh Allen, Michael Thomas, Elijah Mitchell, Josh Jacobs, Sky Moore, Traylon Burks, Gerald Everett. I mean, there are a lot of names in there that have been buzzy at times and you want to see the upside for, but to me, that's just too many if things break exactly right for him, then players. I mean, Javonte Williams in round 2, Sky Moore, Traylon Burks, I like better in his spot than Sky Moore where he's going. I just think people are wishing Sky Moore into a better role or a better spot than he has. So the difference to me between these 2 guys is Traylon Burks was a first-round pick to Tennessee on the night that they traded A.J. Brown away. So they immediately need him to be a thing more than Kansas City needs Sky Moore to be a thing, whatever you think about those 2 players against each other. So now we're just waiting for Traylon Burks to prove ready enough to get on the field in front of Nick Westbrook-Akeen and maybe Kyle Phillips. We'll see exactly where everybody stands. So he has a short path to prove that he belongs on the field. And once he's there, it's him versus an aging Robert Woods coming off the knee injury. So a fairly short path for Traylon Burks to relevance. Sky Moore in Kansas City, he could do nothing this year and the Chiefs would be okay. They signed Juju, they signed MVS, they have Travis Kelce. They've been working Sky Moore also behind Mecole Hardman and even Justin Watson. So clearly they're willing to let him come along slowly. And it's clear if you look at the team that there's no need for them to be urgent if he doesn't prove ready.
So team 2 is kind of a boomer team. Looks like it was drafted by an older guy. He knows he should draft a couple younger guys. So he threw in Sky Moore and Traylon Burks. But Elijah Mitchell, Jacobs, McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans. It's a team that, to me, it's a middle of the pack team with some really good names. And I also don't get the phenomenon with both of those teams. Can you just let's see the whole board for now, still, if we can, until we can't see anymore. Yeah, there you go. I don't get taking the second quarterback that early, especially with the Josh Allen team. If I'm the owner, I fire the GM mid-draft. You've put so many eggs in the Josh Allen basket. I might not take another quarterback, period. Never mind one in round 11. And Dak to back up Burrow. Now you're deciding which one to start each week. It's not for me. This Joseph Best asked if it was a best ball format. It's not. It is season-long main event. Joey Brown, Trey Lance, Team 7, best rushing stats if Davin starts on Bob. That's true. But, you also got to realize that you've got to start 2 running backs each week. And if they're putting up 6 points, you're probably going to lose.
Yeah.
So,
I think Joey's saying that this team's best running back plays quarterback. And so that team that we were just talking about, J.K. Dobbins was the only running back until round 10. And then Rashad White.
I get you. Yep, you're right. That's what Joey was saying.
So
Joey's a good guy. He's on Twitter. I think he's a pretty good high stakes guy.
Mm-hmm. We might have this team with no running backs so far that get 10 carries in week 1 between J.K. Dobbins and Rashad White. And, I dig the long-term upside on the guys, but, like you've said a few times, ultimately you have to be able to set lineups here. And there's going to be issues at running back unless they get really lucky over these last few rounds.
I wouldn't be shocked if we found out that team 8 was someone like Dave Hubbard. Look at how good this team's been built. You start with the 4 wide receivers. You get the premium tight end. You get really good value on running backs. You take Drake London and it works out, right? I take back my statement because it worked out. Miles Sanders, Darrell Henderson, Isaiah Pacheco. That running back room has floor and ceiling right now.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got those top 4 picks, top tight end. And I mentioned Dave Hubbard because he's known to push quarterback. It would have been interesting to see if he would have taken Carr. Well, I don't think he would have taken Carr. I think Carr went early, and quarterbacks are going early. But this team 8 is staying disciplined, and he's going. I would not be surprised to see him take 2 or 3 quarterbacks late, upside ones. I wouldn't be surprised to see Fields here. Jameis Winston, those would be the 2 quarterbacks I'd be looking at with that kind of build.
So you like Jameis Winston better than Trevor Lawrence?
Yes. Well, for fantasy football,
I prefer Trevor Lawrence, but I mean,
I could see the argument. He goes ahead of him. I look. Jameis has been a top 5, 6 quarterback once or twice already. Mm-hmm. He plays in a dome. He's got weapons. I mean, he's got a lot of weapons. Jameis has never had this kind of weapons.
Yeah. Well, the last time he was on the field, he had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Correct. I'm really interested to see what he does next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll be watching to see what that team does. The team next to him started with, we noted a fairly running back heavy start. It was Dalvin Cook, but then it was Kyle Pitts, then Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott, Patrick Mahomes, naked at that point. Then it was Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith, Cole Kmet as a second tight end in round 9, then MVS, Nico Collins. So what do you think of that group overall, and now that we have more wide receivers in tow?
I think with him, it's more player selection than it is structure at this point, right? Because he's gotten some decent wide receivers But I'm not big on Dalvin this year. I'm not big on Chubb, although where he got him, it's fine. Zeke just lost his starting left tackle. That's a pretty there's not a lot of upside with those three. And now your fourth wide running back is McKissick. I just think that that team is a lot of squandered opportunity. It's not a terrible team. It could still, eke its way into the playoffs, but I think he squandered a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, a few spots where it could have been a little different. Drake London over Devontae Smith, for example, I think a lot more upside to that one, that particular spot where that could have been an option.
Oh, I would have loved Drake London to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Cole Kmet, but again, when you take Kyle Pitts, who did he? I mean, he passed on James Cook for Cole Kmet. Tell me how that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it's the two flex spots. They already have three running backs, right? So they're betting on the reception there over James Cook's upside in Buffalo, right? I mean, we've got Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Zeke Elliott. So their ideal story is that all three of those guys stay healthy all season, and that even if they don't, there's a wide receiver to plug into that spot.
I think the key thing to understand is look at the running backs that are going now. James Robinson, McKissick, Herbert, Zamir White. I like Zamir White. But, once you get, look at that round 10, that's where the last really good tier goes. I like having my fourth running back by then. Personal thing, round 9, Cole Kmet, and then Valdez-Scantling, a guy who when are you going to feel comfortable starting him? He's more of a best ball guy. I like the Nico Collins pick. I just don't like that guy's draft. And, it's not terrible, but it's just, to me, it's when you look at the craft that's put into team 8, I don't see that in team 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. All right. So we're going to take this thing through the end of round 12, which is coming up, and then other duties of the job call. But what do you think about Jared's team through round 12?
But before I do that, look at team 12.
Uh-huh.
Look at team 12.
We got Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Keenan Allen, Gabe Davis, Justin Herbert. So we've got the Chargers stacked there. Cam Akers in round 6, Devin Singletary, DeAndre Hopkins, Pat Freiermuth, James Cook, Josh Palmer, and Isaiah McKenzie.
I think that's a very nice team.
I think they could come up a little short on wide receiver, but I guess they're banking on running backs in flex early.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the Akers pick, even though it was a value. I probably would have taken. I'm sure he was probably a little disappointed under Renfro. Didn't make it back to him, but I think Joshua Palmer and Isaiah McKenzie are really, really solid guys. I let's just say that it's not a perfect team, but it's a team where I like a lot of the players.
Mm-hmm. Can get with that. We did just have Brian Robinson go at RB 51, round 12. So
you were asking me about Jared.
Uh-huh.
I like what he's done the last 3 rounds. I like Rondell Moore. I like Madison, and I like Gage. Gage was going in the 7th, 8th round a month ago. They signed Julio, and Godwin looks like he's coming back sooner rather than later. I don't love his team overall, but I thought he did a good job with those last 3 picks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that he could bring himself around to pick Russell Gage, because I know he's not huge on Russell Gage in general, but I think the fall is a bit too much for him right now, because it clearly his injury that has had him out for a while hurts. The buzz on Julio Jones hurts, but I think wide receiver 62 is an overreaction on Russell Gage.
All right, now let's go back to team 8. So he's taken his quarterback. He got Matthew Stafford in the 12th versus, how much is he losing? But look at what how he was able to cover his running backs, top wide receivers, top tight end, and still to come back and start Matt Stafford every week.
Yeah.
This guy's putting on a master class.
And, there's some luck at play a little bit just in who gets there. We talked about Chase Edmonds getting there. We talked about Miles Sanders getting there. Matthew Stafford is QB 14, some luck, but a lot of fantasy football is about setting yourself up to take advantage of the luck. And it's not like this team was built. I'm sure this team was not built planning for Matthew Stafford to stick around, but you read the board, you see who has a chance to make it, you see how big the tier is, and then you make your call at each round based on stuff like that.
And you even get the stack with Allen Robinson.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. Am I any better of a drafter in drafts where I did a couple drafts recently where I didn't like my team from the 4-hole. Am I any worse of a drafter? No, but no value fell to me, right? Mm-hmm. So every pick was kind of agonizing. But there's other drafts like this one. The key is being able to recognize someone who knows how to build when the opportunity comes. Mm-hmm. And that's why I had digs against some of these other teams, because their construction was clunky. They missed opportunities, and that does tend to catch up with you over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So we're going to head out of here because, like I said, other aspects of the job are calling. But Todd, thank you very much for accepting the invitation and coming on to talk through this draft with me. We'll see how the rest of these rosters play out.
Sorry I was so shy.
Yeah. We can always, count on you to be coaxed out of your mouse hole to talk about football teams.
And to be direct and, and I'll just leave with this. I was hard on a couple of these teams and very slathering with others. The key thing is, unlike best ball, being good at the waiver wire, being good at start sit, that's my weakest part. And often that's what decides who wins these season-long leagues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously nothing personal in any of it. Just looking at it and commentating and realizing that we will also be wrong about things along the way.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Always good to talk to you about this stuff, Todd. Tod Burros, thanks for joining me on this one. We'll see how Jared's team plays out. We'll see how he feels about this team. Thank you all for joining us on the stream and for listening in. If you're listening in afterward, head to draftsharks.com. You can get all the draft tools and content that we have over there, and check out the rest of the shows that we have. The season's coming up, and then we'll all be shifting into regular season mode with those regular season tools getting started soon as well. For Tod Burros and the entire Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Schauf saying thanks so much for swimming with us.